I had been living with my husband and daughter in a little apartment downtown for many years when it happened. It all happened one year during the 4th of July. My husband and I had been married for many years at that point, and our daughter was in middle school. My husband was a good bit older than I was, and he had begun to need a cane to walk around most of the time. We didn't let the age gap bother us, though. My husband and I loved cooking out, and we especially enjoyed the fireworks. Our neighborhood always put on a big show, and we had always had a great view from our balcony. We had decorated the apartment with flags and other patriotic stuff, and we were all having a great time. Just before evening, I was in the kitchen cooking dinner so that we could all eat on the balcony while we watched the fireworks. My husband and daughter headed out to the balcony early while I got everything prepared. I had the food ready a little before the show was supposed to start, so we all sat outside and ate while we awaited the fireworks. Just as they started, my husband said that he had to go to the bathroom. He headed inside while my daughter and I watched the show begin.
Hurry up, dear! You're going to miss it!
Don't worry, the real fireworks will happen in the bed later tonight.
He then laughed and said he would be back in a flash. A few minutes later, I heard loud noises coming from inside. I didn't know what it could be, so I got up to check. I opened the sliding door and went inside, and that's when I saw the most horrifying thing ever. There was a masked man wearing dark clothing standing in my living room.
Oh my God! Who the hell are you?
I was scared out of my mind. I had no idea who the man was or how he had gotten inside. That's when my husband suddenly came charging out of nowhere. He gestured me to stay back and then started yelling at the man.
What do you think you're doing? Get the hell out of here before I call the cops! You think I'm scared of you, old man? Shut your mouth before I shut it for you!
The masked man and my husband kept yelling back and forth at each other, but neither of them moved. Meanwhile, I continued to freak out. I felt frozen in place. I knew that I should call the cops or grab my daughter, but I couldn't make a decision. All I could do was watch my husband and the man continue to argue.
Get out of here! I'm not gonna tell you again! Shut your mouth, you piece of shit! Or I'll blast real fireworks at you!
That's when the masked man suddenly charged at my husband and grabbed him by the collar, slamming him to the ground.
Oh God! Somebody help us! Help!
I watched in horror as the man picked my husband up and threw him across the room like a rag doll. Then, he picked up my husband's metal cane and started to threaten me with it.
You wanna end up like him? Ha! I'll bash your skull in!
My daughter came running in at just that moment. I instinctively grabbed her hand and ran to the washroom as the man chased after us. I was able to pull my daughter in and slam the door and lock it behind us in the nick of time. One more second and the intruder would have gotten a hold of us. He started banging on the door and yelling at us as my daughter and I cowered inside.
Open this door, I'll kill you, you hear me?
He then started whacking at the door with the cane. He hit it over and over again like some kind of lunatic. With every swing, the door shook more and more, and it seemed like he was going to break it down. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't think that they would get there in time. I immediately called my husband's brother instead. He lived very close by, and I knew we needed help immediately. There was no way that my husband would last very long with the intruder since he was on the older side, and the crazed man had a cane. As I called his brother, I heard loud tussling coming from the other side of the door. I begged him to hurry up.
Please, you have to help us! He's going to kill him!
I thought I had made the right decision, but to our demise, my brother-in-law's car was being repaired. He had no way of getting to us in time. I knew then that it was too late.
Just stay in the washroom. I'm coming as fast as I can. I'll take an Uber.
He hung up the phone and I immediately started calling the cops. But just at that moment, I heard my husband screaming mixed with the sound of fireworks.
Ah!
It was absolute pandemonium. I wanted to try and help him, but I was too afraid to open the door and run the risk of my daughter getting hurt. I was completely helpless. I told the cops where we were and they said they were on their way. There was no way that they could get there fast enough. The tussling sounds continued, and I heard my husband scream a few more times. Then, after several intense minutes, the loud noises stopped. The cops and my brother-in-law eventually arrived, but when they got there, the suspect was already gone. My husband was found laying on the floor, still conscious, but barely responsive. His face was bloody and bruised. They took him to the hospital right away, but there wasn't much they could do by that point. He died later on from blunt force trauma. The masked man was never found. Ever since that day, my daughter and I have been traumatized by the 4th of July. We don't even celebrate it anymore. It's just too painful. all it does is remind us of that horrible night. This story was inspired by a horrific 4th of July incident regarding a 64-year-old man who was taken out inside his Lincoln Heights apartment while confronting an intruder during a hot prowl burglary. It happened just before 9:30 p.m. at the apartment. At the scene, responding officers found the victim, later identified as Jose Mencia, inside suffering from blunt force trauma. Mencia was pronounced dead at the scene. According to the LAPD, Mencia was outside watching fireworks with his wife when the suspect entered the apartment. At some point, the victim went inside and encountered the suspect. Neighbors told police they heard an argument between the two people. Mencia's wife was not physically injured in Monday night's deadly incident. The victim's grief-stricken wife told reporters that the suspect entered the home while she was serving food. She went into the bathroom and locked the door, and could even hear the pair fighting through the door. Oscar Mencia, the victim's younger brother, said when he got the frantic call that his brother had been attacked, he felt helpless because his car was not working, preventing him from rushing to his brother's aid. It was unclear if the male suspect stole anything from the apartment, but the victim's wife said she saw the suspect leaving with a bag. The suspect is described as a man wearing a mask and dark clothing and remains at large. The investigation remains ongoing.
This happened last year on the 4th of July. My wife's birthday was only a few days apart from America's, so she has all the more reason to celebrate. As for myself, my favorite part is that it's one of the handful of days out of the year where it's acceptable to drink beer in a public park. All the neighborhood dads did it, and their respective families would gather around to watch the fireworks display. Luckily, my family lives within walking distance of the park. If we wanted to, we could get a decent view from our front yard, but we preferred to walk the couple of blocks it takes to get the best view possible. Last year was no exception, but we happened to be running late. It was already starting to get dark, but none of the snacks were packed and there was no beer or ice in the cooler yet. I told my wife and son to go ahead of me in the hopes of getting a good spot last minute. I stayed behind to pack the cooler, make a couple of quick sandwiches, and get the lawn chairs out of the garage and ready to go. By the time I was finally on my way to the park, the last of the daylight was gone. I tried to hurry, but I was weighed down by all the stuff I was carrying. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite able to make it in time. About halfway there, the first fireworks went off. They lit up the sky and sent shockwaves through my chest. I knew I was missing out on some fun, but at least my son was there in time for the full experience. When I looked back to the horizon to see where I was going, something, or rather someone, had appeared from the trees. A man dressed as Uncle Sam was pointing at me with one hand, and sparklers burning in his other hand. He then picked up a sack full of fireworks over his shoulder, and before I knew it, the man was running straight for me.
What are you doing all the way out here? You're missing the fireworks!
I'm on my way now. I'm just a few minutes late.
You better give me a damn good reason why you're late to celebrating independence with your countrymen, or I'll give you a sparkling lobotomy.
Relax, I was just getting some sandwiches and a couple of beers. I used American cheese, I swear. No Swiss.
Treason! Sandwiches? That's the reason you're missing my once-in-a-lifetime show? For sandwiches?
Hey, those were for my family, you asshole!
Deadbeat! Do you know how much time and effort I put into the show to make it special? Just for you to abandon your family and your country for a couple of crummy sandwiches? And imported beer? Ah!
Stay back, don't come near me!
I want you dead! Ah! Somebody get this psycho off of me! I just want to watch the fireworks with my family, not get poked by an old guy on top of me! Help!
I was finally able to get away from that psycho and make it through to the clearing of the park, where I saw the crowd of people enjoying the fireworks. But then, out of nowhere, all the fireworks stationed in the park started going off randomly in all directions. That day was the worst disaster in the history of my town, and it's ruined the 4th of July for everyone who went through it. The psycho pretending to be Uncle Sam didn't just attack me, he was also the perpetrator of the events in the park. He sabotaged the fireworks to go off in a dangerous and unpredictable way. And worse, he rigged some homemade explosives to detonate in the chaos. Sadly, my wife was hit with a piece of shrapnel and didn't survive, along with a few others. Fortunately, my son survived with minor injuries. A man responsible was later arrested and charged accordingly. As the 4th of July approaches, I know that my son and I will not be participating this year, and maybe never. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a 37-year-old man named Anthony John Mayer, who was charged over a Michigan 4th of July fireworks disaster that left 1 dead and 9 injured. Authorities said Meyer brought and lit a quote-unquote salute cannon that sent shrapnel into a crowd gathered to view a public fireworks display. Following the incident, an investigation involving detectives, the Michigan State Police Bomb Squad, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives revealed that a homemade salute cannon carrying gunpowder caused the explosion. Police say the device was intended to create a loud salute or boom when ignited. However, the device exploded and metal pieces of the cannon were dispersed into the crowd. One of the victims of the explosion was a 41-year-old mother named Jana Daniels, whose 42nd birthday was 17 days later. 9 other people suffered injuries varying from minor to critical, said authorities. The explosion also damaged several vehicles and homes.
This happened a few years ago on the 4th of July. I had recently bought a house with my girlfriend of 7 years, whom I recently asked to marry me. We already have 2 kids together. This year was the first 4th of July we were celebrating as an engaged couple and homeowners, so I wanted to make this an extra special summer. We invited a bunch of our friends and family to our house for a backyard barbecue, and I promised everyone they would see fireworks they would never forget. I bought the biggest, baddest fireworks I could find on the internet for a great price. This was not the usual Roman candles, sparklers, and tiny little rockets that I usually got, if I could recall. It was a firework called something in the lines of the Armageddon. It was one of those fancy fireworks boxes that shot out a variety of fireworks and allegedly lasted a minute. On the day of the 4th of July, I spent the afternoon manning the grill and catching up with my old friends. I let the older kids play with the smoke bombs and bottle rockets, but it didn't stop them from begging me to set off the big fireworks all day. I laughed it off and told them to wait until it got dark. I didn't let it show, but I was also feeling very impatient to see the real show. Finally, in the evening, it was time. There was still a bit of light, but it was dark enough. I had all my fireworks set up on the lawn of my backyard. I started with the smallest fireworks I bought from the internet, a pack of 6 exploding mortars in all different colors. And then finally, the best for last, the Armageddon. I then picked a spot in the backyard and started digging a hole. I then planted the box inside to keep it from going anywhere but up and hurting anybody in the crowd. My fiance then handed me a grill lighter to light the fuse. Then I ran back to the crowd where we were all waiting in anticipation. The fire crawled up the fuse and into the box, and then nothing. Everyone was disappointed. I was worried I might have gotten a bunch of defective fireworks from the website. I gave it about a minute, then I went over and grabbed it out of the ground. I was partly confused as to why it didn't go off, and partly mad that I had apparently been ripped off. I took the box over to the fireworks table to see if I could fix it somehow. I started playing around with the fuse, nudging it back and forth to see if it would do anything. But nothing happened until... That's when the damn thing went off. I felt a blinding flash of light, and at the same moment felt the rocket hit my right eye and fly across my face with a trail of fire. I collapsed, screaming. After that flash of light, everything had gone black. As this realization dawned on me, I could hear everyone screaming in panic as the fireworks began shooting in every direction and at the family. A moment later, things got even worse. The rocket managed to light the entire table of fireworks on fire, and after just a few seconds, every single one of them started going off as well. It was a brutal barrage of explosion after explosion. Everyone screaming and crying and trying to get away. I couldn't see a thing. I was so in shock that I couldn't even stand up. I just cowered with my head in my hands and screamed helplessly as I listened to my family and friends being bombed by the fireworks I brought into my own home. It seemed like an eternity. I spent the entire time hoping that nobody else got hurt and that I wasn't going to be blind forever. I wished that I could get up and help, but my body kept telling me there was nothing I could do because I was already dead. It was like my entire life had been struck from existence by a single rocket. I thought for a minute that I was actually dead, but eventually the fireworks died down and my wife was able to come to my aid. She brought me a wet rag to cover my eyes, but I'm sure she had misunderstood the severity of my injury. She kept asking me to open my eyes despite me screaming and wailing in pain.
It burns like hell! I can't see anything! Somebody give me some Visine!
All I could remember was hearing my wife scream in horror and telling me that my eyes were pitch black. In that moment, I knew how badly I messed up. My wife called 911 immediately. Obviously, I don't think anybody but me and my family were still in the backyard when the ambulance arrived. Luckily, nobody else suffered much more than a minor burn or a twisted ankle while running away. I wasn't so fortunate. While the rest of my body was uninjured, my eyes were severely damaged. I am now blind in both eyes. Today, all I can see is dim, shapeless, colorless blurs. My greatest concern is that I will never be able to see my wife ever again. Even worse, I won't be able to watch my kids grow up. I'll never see my youngest son's first steps. If I ever had another child, I will never know what they look like. If anyone ever uses fireworks of any kind, I strongly warn them in every possible way to use eye protection and to never look directly down the barrel of a firework. If I had been wearing safety glasses that day, I wouldn't be blind. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a man who lost his sight after fireworks exploded in his face. His greatest concern now is if he will ever have the chance to see his children again. The victim's name was James Crook. He was lighting fireworks on July 4th and had just lit a firework with the grill lighter, but wasn't sure if the fuse had lit. Crook then bent over the firework to check the fuse when it exploded in his face. Crook's fiancée recalls his eyes being pitch black when he opened them. Doctors have mentioned that Crook's only hope to regain partial sight is in his left eye with a cornea transplant, and that his right eye is extensively worse and will probably need a prosthetic cornea. Crook told reporters that he doesn't have health insurance. He and his fiancée have since set up a GoFundMe page to help cover his medical expenses.